The main thing we should talk about first should be a review from your previous chemistry course. The interactions I refer to between elements and molecules are termed intermolecular forces. There are a couple types of these forces, and they can have different effects. First off, let's clarify that intermolecular forces refer to interactions between covalent molecules. Ionic compounds will have forces much stronger than any of the forces we will talk about. Ion-ion forces occur in a crystalline solid between positively and negatively charged ions. Sometimes we call ion-ion forces electrostatic interactions. Remember that ionic bonds are just two elements that have opposite charges. These bonds form substances that have high melting points and high boiling points. For example, some general chemistry laboratory classes include an experiment in which you melt NaCl. If you had this experiment, did you melt NaCl? You probably didn't, since it would require an extremely high temperature. Going back to intermolecular forces, we generally consider three types: dispersion forces, dipole-dipole forces, and hydrogen bonding. Let's go through each of them one by one. Dispersion forces are the weakest intermolecular force. Dispersion forces happen in every covalent molecule, nonpolar or polar. This is because dispersion forces are temporary attractions, occurring when electrons shared between two elements form a small and temporary dipole. Remember when we talked about electrons as clouds? Well, even if we have a nonpolar bond like carbon and carbon, the electrons are not completely equally shared between the carbons 100% of the time. There will be a moment in time where the electrons may be denser toward one carbon, forming a short charge at one carbon, or a temporary dipole. The next force are dipole-dipole forces. These are similar in concept to dispersion forces, but occur exclusively at polar covalent bonds. At a polar bond, some of the electron density will be favored to one side of a bond, forming a partial charge at that element. This charge is much stronger and lasts a lot longer than the charges caused by dispersion forces. Therefore, dipole-dipole interactions are stronger than dispersion forces. Hydrogen bonds are the strongest intermolecular force. Hydrogen bonds occur when a hydrogen atom bonded to a strongly electronegative atom interacts with another strongly electronegative atom. In specific, hydrogen bonds occur only between nitrogen, oxygen, and fluorine. These three intermolecular forces have many effects on the properties of certain molecules. It's important to remember which ones are stronger or weaker than others. In the next videos, we'll wrap up how intermolecular forces interact to affect the properties of certain molecules.